I am wealthy because I spoke it into law. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the words we speak are never idle sounds drifting into the air, but seeds dropped into the rich soil of consciousness, destined to bear fruit after their own kind. In the book of Job, chapter 22, verse 28, it is written, "Thou shalt also decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee, and the light shall shine upon thy ways." And there is something so tender and so mighty in that promise, that the moment we dare to speak our good as already accomplished, the very light of heaven moves to make it so. Say it with me. I am wealthy now. I am supplied now. My word is my wand. Again, I am wealthy now. I am supplied now. My word is my wand. And if this teaching is meeting you at just the right moment, I would love for you to subscribe, so that tomorrow's word can find you the same gentle way this one did. Before we go any further, would you type the words God supplies in the comments below? And let that be your very first decree of the day. The first decree is that your word is your wand. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the tongue is the most powerful instrument in the whole of creation, more powerful than any tool of steel or stone, because with it we build or we destroy, we open doors or we seal them shut. When you say, I am poor, I am struggling, I never get ahead, you are not describing your life, you are legislating it. You are standing before the bench of your own consciousness and passing a verdict against yourself. But the wonderful truth is that the same court is always in session, and you may rise at any moment and speak a different verdict. You may say, I am wealthy, I am supplied, every need of mine is met, and that new decree begins at once to override the old one. This is why Florence Scovel Shinn so often said that we must watch our words as carefully as we would watch a lit candle near dry paper, because a careless word can undo in a moment what faith has been building for years. So today, notice the small sentences you toss away without thought, the "this is too expensive," the "I could never afford that," and instead, practice speaking as one who already has the wand in hand. So speak this decree with me. My word is law, and I speak only my good. My word is law, and I speak only my good. The second decree is that your concept of yourself is the goldsmith of your whole life. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the words I am are the two most powerful words in existence, because whatever you attach to them, you are handing to the universe as your order for delivery. If you have quietly believed yourself to be the struggling one, the one who never catches a break, the one for whom money moves toward everyone else but never toward you, then that belief has been standing at the counter of supply, placing that very order, again and again, without your even knowing it. Picture a woman named Grace, who worked years at a small shop, and whenever a customer complimented her, she would laugh and say, "Oh, I am just the type who never gets ahead." She meant it as a joke, but she said it so often that it became her signature. And Florence Scovel Shinn would tell you that the universe does not laugh along with our jokes. It simply takes down the order exactly as spoken. So month after month, Grace found small leaks, an unexpected bill, a missed opportunity, nothing dramatic, just enough to keep the joke feeling true. Until one day, she grew tired of her own sentence, and quietly began saying instead, I am the kind of person good things come to easily. At first it felt like a lie dressed up as hope, but she kept speaking it, gently, the way you might speak to a frightened child. And slowly the small leaks stopped. An old debt was settled early. A raise came without her even asking. Nothing about her effort had changed. Only her sentence had changed. And this is the mercy in it. You may change your order at any moment you choose, because the concept of self is not fixed like a stone. It is fluid. It is written in soft wax, and soft wax can be remolded. So today, quietly notice how you speak of yourself to others and to your own heart. Do you say, I am the type who never has enough? Or do you dare to say, I am the type for whom supply flows easily? Florence Scovel Shinn would remind you that the outer world is only ever a mirror, faithfully returning the image you hold of yourself within. If the mirror shows lack, do not attack the mirror. Go instead to the one standing before it, and lift their chin, and change their garments, for as the self-concept rises, the reflection has no choice but to rise with it. This is not vanity, this is law, and it is a kind and patient law, willing to serve whatever concept you hand to it, faithfully, without questioning your worthiness. So let today be the day you hand it a nobler concept. So speak this decree with me: I am the wealthy self, and I claim it now. I am the wealthy self, and I claim it now. The third decree is that supply is infinite, and it was never, ever meant to travel through only one narrow channel. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that so many of us make the painful mistake of believing our income depends upon a single employer, a single client, a single relative, a single stroke of luck, and when we believe this, we unconsciously build a dam across a river that was always meant to run wide and free. But the truth she taught, again and again, is that God, or the one great source of all supply, is not limited to any single channel. The paycheck is not your supply. The job is not your supply. The person who pays you is not your supply. These are merely temporary channels through which the one true supply happens to be flowing today, and if one channel should ever narrow or close, the source itself has 1,000 other channels ready to open. This is why Florence Scovel Shinn loved to remind her students of the widow in the old story, who had only a small pot of oil, and yet when she trusted and acted in faith, that oil multiplied into vessel after vessel, until there were no more vessels left to fill. The oil did not stop flowing. Her own capacity to receive was what determined the limit, and this is worth sitting with quietly, because so often we believe supply itself is stingy, when in truth, it is our own consciousness that has been standing at the door with too small a cup. So today, practice lifting your idea of the source itself. Stop asking, will my boss give me a raise, and start declaring the source of my supply is unfailing, and it flows to me now through channels expected and unexpected. This single shift, from small channel thinking to infinite source thinking, is one of the quietest and most powerful decrees you can make, because it takes the pressure off any one person or circumstance and places your faith back where it has always belonged, in the one true unfailing supply. So speak this decree with me: supply is infinite, and I am connected to it now. Supply is infinite, and I am connected to it now. The fourth decree is that the old self must be allowed to quietly dissolve, so that the true and wealthy self can finally step forward and breathe. And here I want to speak gently, because this is often misunderstood. When we speak of a self dying, we do not mean anything final or frightening. We mean only that the tired, fearful, lacking version of you, the one who learned long ago to expect very little, that version is not the real you at all. It was only ever a costume worn for a season, and Florence Scovel Shinn taught that we are meant to let that costume fall away completely, the way a snake sheds a skin it has outgrown, or the way a caterpillar surrenders its whole familiar body inside the quiet dark of a cocoon, trusting a process it cannot see, in order to become something with wings. This shedding can feel strange at first, because the old self was familiar, even if it was uncomfortable. It knew its lines, it knew its small budget, it knew its careful worry, and stepping into a wealthier identity can feel almost like stepping into someone else's shoes. Let me give you a picture of this. Think of a woman standing at a checkout counter, watching the total climb on the little screen, and feeling that old familiar tightening in her chest, the quiet inner voice that whispers you cannot really afford this, put something back. That voice is not her enemy. It is simply an old recording, playing from a self she has outgrown, a self that learned in some distant year that money was scarce and love was conditional, and there was never quite enough to go around. And here is the tender part: that recording will keep playing at every counter, every bill, every bank statement, until she stops treating it as the truth, and starts recognizing it as a costume she no longer has to wear. Florence Scovel Shinn would say to her, gently, that frightened one standing at the register is not who you are, she is who you were, and she is allowed to rest now. So when old fears rise up, when the tired voice says, "Who do you think you are to claim wealth?" Do not fight that voice with force. Simply let it pass through you like a cloud passing over a hill. The hill does not chase the cloud away. It simply remains, solid, unmoved, and in time the cloud moves on. This is how you let the false self dissolve, not by battling it, but by quietly refusing to keep feeding it your attention. Think of it like an old name tag pinned to a coat you no longer wear. You do not have to rip it off in anger. You simply take off the coat and put on a new one. Every time you catch yourself narrating the old story, the "I have always struggled," the "money slips through my fingers," the "there is never enough," gently close that book and open instead to the new one, where the chapter is already titled, "The Wealthy One Arrives." Florence Scovel Shinn taught that consciousness is like a photograph negative. Whatever image you keep developing in the darkroom of your thought is the image that will eventually appear in the light of your circumstances. So if you keep developing the old negative of lack, you will keep receiving prints of lack. But the moment you slide in a new negative, the new self, wealthy, calm, provided for, the darkroom begins developing that instead. And this new self is not a stranger arriving from nowhere. It is the original self, the one made in the image of a generous and abundant source. The poverty self was only ever the imposter wearing the family name. This dissolving is not loss, it is release. It is the tight fist finally opening so the hand can receive something better. So let the old worn cloak fall, without ceremony, without struggle. Simply let it fall the way autumn leaves let go of the branch, not torn away, but ready. So speak this decree with me: the old lack self dissolves, and my true self stands free. The old lack self dissolves, and my true self stands free. The fifth decree is that you must guard your tongue the way a jeweler guards the door of a vault. Florence Scovel Shinn was famous for teaching her students to become detectives of their own speech, listening closely to every sentence that left their lips, because the subconscious mind, she taught, does not distinguish between a joke, a complaint, or a genuine belief. It simply absorbs whatever is spoken with feeling and begins working quietly to make it real. And this is worth sitting with for a long moment, because most of us have never once considered that our throwaway remarks are actually orders placed at the counter of the unseen. Let me tell you of a woman I will call Ruth, who kept a small flower shop on a quiet corner, and every January, without fail, Ruth would sigh to her one employee and say, "Well, flowers just do not sell in the winter. People do not think of flowers when it is cold." And she said this so often, so casually, that it became a kind of ritual greeting between them. And January after January, sure enough, the shop grew quiet, the register grew light, and Ruth would nod to herself and say, "See, I told you so," as though she had simply predicted the weather. But Florence Scovel Shinn would gently point out that Ruth had not predicted anything at all. She had ordered it. Her own words had gone down into her consciousness like a farmer's hand pressing seed into soil, and her consciousness, faithful servant that it is, had simply grown what was planted. This is the sobering part of the fifth decree, that the universe does not check whether your words are true before it acts on them. It only checks whether you meant them, whether feeling was behind them, and a sigh repeated for years carries a great deal of feeling. So when someone says half laughing, "Oh, I am always broke," or "I never win anything," or "business is always slow this time of year," the subconscious quietly nods and dutifully arranges circumstances to prove that sentence true, and it will keep proving it, faithfully, for as long as the sentence keeps being spoken. This is why Florence Scovel Shinn was so insistent on the practice of denials and affirmations spoken together. A denial is simply the refusing of the old claim, saying there is no truth in lack, there is no truth in delay, and an affirmation follows immediately after, filling that empty space with the new truth. There is only supply, there is only right action, there is only perfect timing. She taught that a denial without an affirmation leaves a room swept but empty, and an empty room in consciousness will always be filled by something, so it must be filled deliberately, with light, rather than left to chance or to old habit. Now, back to Ruth. Imagine if instead she had trained herself to catch that sentence the moment it rose in her throat, and to say instead, "There is no season to my supply. My flowers are wanted and needed all year long." This is not simply positive thinking laid over a discouraging fact. It is a correction of the very seed being planted, a redirecting of the order being placed. And Florence Scovel Shinn promised that consciousness always eventually catches up to the word, sometimes slowly, sometimes with startling speed, but always. So today, practice this simple and quiet habit. Whenever a lacking thought rises to your lips, whether about money, or health, or timing, or people, pause for just a breath, and say inwardly, "That is not true of me," and follow it at once with a brighter word. "I am supplied, I am provided for, my good comes to me now." At first this will feel like interrupting a very old conversation you have been having with yourself for years, and it is. Over weeks this correcting becomes a discipline, and over months it becomes a nature, until one day you notice you no longer have to catch the old sentence at all, because it has simply stopped arising, having been starved of the attention that once fed it. And Florence Scovel Shinn taught her students that a guarded tongue, faithfully practiced, becomes in time an instrument so refined, so trusted by the unseen, that it can call forth entire changes of circumstance simply by the steadiness of what it chooses, and just as importantly, refuses to say, "So speak this decree with me. I guard my tongue, and I release only golden words. I guard my tongue, and I release only golden words." Well, sixth decree is that gratitude is the seal upon every decree you have spoken. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that it is not enough to simply speak a new word once and walk away. The word must be sustained, and the surest way to sustain any state of consciousness is to thank the universe for it before it has fully appeared. This can feel strange at first, thanking for wealth you cannot yet see in your bank account, thanking for supply that has not yet arrived in the mail. But this is precisely the leap of faith she taught. Because gratitude spoken in advance says to the universe, "I already consider this settled. I am not begging, I am not straining. I am simply acknowledging what is already mine by law," and there is a wonderful difference between the energy of begging and the energy of thanking. Begging pushes your good away, because it silently insists that it is not yet here, but gratitude draws your good closer, because it silently insists that it already is. Let me tell you of a woman I will simply call the one with the small kitchen table. She had spent years setting that table for lack. One plate, one worry, one careful portion, always counting what remained rather than what was coming. And every evening before her meal she would say under her breath, "I suppose this will have to do." And Florence Scovel Shinn would say that sentence alone was a decree. A small, quiet vow of scarcity, spoken so often it became furniture in her own mind. But one day she learned this teaching of thanking in advance, and she began, almost shyly at first, to set her table a little differently. She would pause before the meal, and instead of, "I suppose this will have to do," she would whisper, "Thank you that I am provided for. Thank you that more is already on its way." Nothing in her cupboard changed that first night. Nothing in her mailbox changed that first week. But something in her began to change. The shoulders that had carried worry so long began to soften, and within a season, opportunities she had never asked for began quietly arriving. A forgotten debt repaid, a friend's unexpected gift, a small raise she had not even requested. And she would tell you now that the turning point was never the raise itself. The turning point was the evening she chose to thank before she had proof, because that thanks was the watering of a seed already planted deep in her word. This is why Florence Scovel Shinn so often said that gratitude is not the reward that follows supply. Gratitude is the very cause that summons it. Most people wait to feel thankful until the check arrives, until the door opens, until the proof is undeniable, and by waiting, they keep supply forever standing at a distance. but the one who thanks first, who thanks while the cupboard still looks bare, who thanks while the mail still looks empty, that one is doing the quiet work of the goldsmith. Shaping the unseen into the seen, gratitude set in advance is not pretending, it is remembering that the law never changes, that what you decree and believe must find its way to you, and so thanking early is simply agreeing with the law before your eyes have caught up to it. So practice today the quiet art of thanking before receiving. Thank you that supply flows to me easily. Thank you that my needs are already met. Thank you that the right doors are already opening. Let this gratitude become a steady undertone beneath your entire day, not a loud performance, simply a warm, quiet hum running underneath your thoughts, the way a fire hums low and steady long after the flame has stopped leaping. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that this sustained gratitude is what keeps the wealthy state from slipping away after a good morning affirmation. It is the difference between planting a seed and then forgetting it, and planting a seed and faithfully watering it every single day until the harvest appears. One gives you a barren patch of ground and a memory of good intentions. The other gives you a garden, and gardens, she would remind you, do not spring up from a single morning of hope. They rise from days upon days of quiet, faithful tending. And let this be the decree that follows you from this table to the next. Let gratitude be your daily watering. Let it be the last decree of your evening and the first decree of your morning, until wealth is no longer something you are reaching for, but simply something you are living from, until your own table, however small it looks today, becomes the very picture of the one with the small kitchen table, set now not for lack but for overflow. So speak this decree with me. I give thanks now for the wealth already mine. I give thanks now for the wealth already mine. Here is the whole picture. Your word is your wand, and it builds whatever you hand it. Your concept of self is the mirror, and it reflects whatever you believe. Supply is infinite, flowing from one unfailing source through countless channels. The old lacking self is only a costume, gently dissolving so the true self can stand free. Your tongue is guarded like a vault, releasing only golden words, and gratitude seals every decree, keeping the wealthy state alive and growing, day after day. If this teaching has stirred something quiet and true in you, I want to invite you into something I have prepared with great care, called the Overflow Covenant. It is a